Hey, thanks for hitting play. I'm so delighted to bring this conversation to you with Myriam Hadnes from Workshops Work podcast. Together, we probably host the most, I've had the first time facilitator podcast for some while. It's kind of on a hiatus, but it still gets a ton of downloads every week. And Myriam has continued her show weekly. Together, we probably host the most popular workshops podcasts in the world, which is easy to say because it's a niche, but she visits every year. And here is a conversation. This is part one. I've cut it into two. Part one of our chat on the couch at home, sharing a bit about what we explored over the 24 hours we were together. Part two will be on this podcast tomorrow. Enjoy the listen. Because I'm going to hit record now.
Yeah.
I'll just hit record. I'm with Myriam Hadnes. If you don't know her work, you have to check her out. She's got the podcast Workshops Work. That's how we sort of met.
Yeah.
But I think over that time, people might assume that we talk about workshops constantly. It's like maybe 5% of what we talk about. Anyway, Myriam's in my lounge room. Myriam, great to have you on the show.
So excited to be here.
The reason I've just hit record now without really much of a preface to this is I brought out my recording gear. And Myriam's like, is that it? It's my phone. It's my iPhone.
And I just realized, so also being a podcaster, that I had somehow this image in my mind that we need to have, air quotes, professional microphone and a professional recording device to have separate tracks. But if we are sitting in the same space anyway, why not recording with the iPhone? Why not?
Why not? So we're going to talk a bit about that. And I think what you were talking about before is like the professional gear. And I actually do have the professional gear. So that's a fair assumption to make. But for me to bring it out, like test the battery, it just creates that sort of friction. And for a daily show, I just had to find like a really quick way to maintain quality, but also just get it done.
And about this time a year ago, we had this amazing conversation. We were sitting here with our microphones, and somehow I guess I was playing around with the microphone and I turned it off. So we lost the audio track. So it was unpublishable. So yes, so professional in our minds. And at the end, absolutely useless.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to talk about that phrase. And I don't know how much you want to reveal today because this is like your kind of big thing.
Yeah.
And you did reveal it to me last year. Can you say the word to kick it off? Because I feel you should share it. What's the word? What are we talking about?
Unprofessionalism. Yeah, that's my book project. I'm writing a book. It's going to be called Unprofessionalism. And it's about us chasing this label to be professional and thereby actually totally forgetting to be human. And it's all about appearances. It's all about putting on the mask, being perfect, being polished. Although nobody wants to be perfect. Nobody wants to be polished. And everyone is just winging it anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and we are open and honest about it. And that's what I love about our conversations, right? You have an idea, you tried, you wing it, I figure it out, I'm similar. And whenever I work with clients, they seem so professional. But when I look under the surface, I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah. Well, I think something that's reassuring is that everyone is just making it up. And plus, there was a very famous Steve Jobs snippet where he's like, if you look around the world, just remember that everything here has been made up by someone who had no idea either. And we've all just inherited these things. And you brought up something yesterday around like where professionalism actually came from. Because I've never even thought about it. Like it's just a way of working. Like you go in, you dress professionally, you respond professionally. Like it's this thing we've just had to do.
Yeah, and I really got into a rabbit hole to unpack. I was like, okay, if I want to challenge the notion of professionalism, I need to understand where it comes from. And professionalism actually comes from the professions. So back in the days, it was like a social contract where you had professions that had to maintain and secure the quality to protect society. So as a lawyer, as a medical doctor, as an engineer, you get the stamp professional, showing that you went through all the studies and have all the credentials. But then nowadays, we have corporate professionalism, which was basically totally hijacking this the thing, because now corporate professionalism means to function according to the corporate standards and to their needs. So it's basically just performing.
Yeah. And it's what I like about unprofessional. I think I love it. I mean, I remember when you shared it last year, I was like, oh, that is so good. Because I'm a little bit over authenticity. And I think there's also times where, like I was sharing this, we were talking about over brunch, even when I was doing a podcast interview, I'm on the Zoom call. We're having a bit of banter. I hit that record button. Even I'm shuffling in my seat. I'm leaning forward. I'm putting on this new voice. It's just something that's inherent, like that performance, the performative element. And I think, particularly if you go back to workshops or like hosting events, being a speaker, sometimes you just can't really show up as yourself because it's not conducive to what you're there for. Like you're being hired to do something. But I think it's similar to sport performers. Like sometimes I don't feel like rocking up and doing this thing, but it's about performance and there's a thing. But for general day-to-day life, it seems like we've just had to all fit into this mold in every meeting and every email and
it's 100%. And I think the problem with it is that nowadays we are competing against AI, basically. So AI knows more, has the better answers, knows how to do everything. So if professionalism means being polished and perfect, then AI would be the most professional thing. And just by the sound of it, it's absurd. So it's not about the knowledge. It's not about the polished and the performance. It's about and I think it's about the growth mindset. It's about the pioneering mindset, because I have the impression the moment where and that's the core of the book, the moment where we try to be professional and we are trying to hide everything that we don't know, because we have the impression we have to fit into this external image of what it means to be professional, then suddenly we turn into imposters because we're doubting ourselves, then we're hiding what we don't know, we're pretending, and this leads to loneliness and to burnout because we are not being ourselves. We forget to be human, and that's our competitive advantage against AI.
Totally.
And that's what we strive for, that's what we long for. Right? The being human together.
And that's what I was thinking, like, this daily podcast is like, how am I going to combat AI? And maybe not combat, obviously I want to work with it. I don't want it to be a compatible relationship. But what is my unique difference? And with AI, it's like, it can't be me. It can't just, and like actually the fact that I say some things that maybe I possibly shouldn't say or like have a stupid laugh or, don't have show notes that are polished. That's the competitive advantage, or that's the difference, the differentiator as well.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of Pat Flynn and what he called your unfair advantage, where he says the unfair advantage is something that you bring to the table that is so inherently you that nobody can possibly copy it, because for everyone else to copy it, it would be work. But for you, it comes so naturally.
Yeah, we were talking about like last night, sometimes there's work that we do and it's like, I can't even believe I'm getting paid. I actually feel terrible that I'm invoicing because this is like the easiest, most effortless thing. And I'm like, that's bang on exactly what we need to be doing.
Yes.
That alignment.
100%. I think especially when we're freelancers or entrepreneurs, because the only thing that we can do that nobody else can do is the thing that comes easy, and we should actually be outsourcing everything else.
Terrible at that, yeah.
But why would we do something that we are not good at?
I know.
If this is the life that we are creating for ourselves.
You're right. It's a choice. Yeah. So yeah, and like this is the thing, when this is like our third time that we've caught up. So every year Myriam comes on a pilgrimage to Australia to escape the European winter, and we have like incredible conversations. And I said to Myriam this morning, I just wish I had a notepad constantly, or just we recorded all of our conversations. There's so much in this. I wanted to ask you about unprofessionalism and the inherent link to a lack of quality.
Thank you.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
That's a very important point, because I think so. The word unprofessionalism is more of a provocation to start thinking of what is it actually that we're chasing by trying to be so professional, and what is behind it. So being unprofessional for me, so unprofessionalism at this new term is rather a alternative to the professionalism, because I think so the reason why I started thinking about it was with the work that I did with Never Done Before. And you were there at the very first festival. It was highly unprofessional. So I invited experts like yourself to present something for the very first time, unpolished, raw, in front of a paying audience. So unprofessional. And everything around it, the communication, the process, the way how we did the back end of it was, air quotes, highly professional.
Yes.
So the quality, and it was not that you would come in and try a tech for the first time, or you didn't know how to host a group. No, you were trying something on a very high level. And I think that's the unprofessionalism for me, is the daring to be human as opposed to trying to be perfect.
So the daring, I love that. And I love the daring approach I've never done before. Like, I think what it did was it attracted the right type of people to that, who paid, but knew that this had never been done. Like, you just set up the expectation beautifully in terms of the professional approach to it, but the inherently unprofessional nature of what this whole thing was about. The daring to be human bit. Why do we get stuck? Like, it seems like everyone kind of, you talk to people at a one-to-one level. Everyone wants more of the humanness.
Yeah.
Then you get into an environment and everyone's self-reinforcing the professional nature of that. Like, what's going on there?
I think we could record an entire episode on that. And I have a few thoughts. I think we all have the desire to show our real selves. And there are academic studies that show that when people get paid to fill in questionnaires, either about something generic or speaking about themselves, they would accept a lower pay to fill in a questionnaire when they can reveal something about themselves.
Really?
Yeah. I found this very interesting, right? So it shows that we love talking about ourselves and being human. And still, I think over the years, we have learned that it's dangerous to be vulnerable because someone might manipulate us, someone might reject us, someone might trigger our wounds from the past when mommy and daddy didn't listen to us, when they told us that we were too much, right? All of these things that are, I think, just wounds from the past. And on top of that, I think, and this will be the last chapter or the last part of the book, is how to be unprofessional in a professional world.
Oh, love that.
Because we're talking about a person we both know who dared to be human and vulnerable in front of an audience as they were speaking, and then be criticized for it. How dare you admitting that you have self-doubt, although you're giving this talk about as an expert. So this is clear punishment of vulnerability, of being human. And if this is what we learn and experience, we think twice whether we want to show up as our real selves.
And I think rejection is it's inevitable. And so what I tend to think is I'd rather be rejected for who I am actually than be rejected for something that this mask that I'm wearing. Because if I'm rejected for the mask, then you have a bit of regret. Like, I was rejected and I wasn't even being myself. But if you've gone all in on that and been like, I've been rejected and I can accept that, I can move on because I'm leaving nothing on the table.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, thanks so much, Myriam. And she responds to that and more in part 2 of our conversation, which you'll hear tomorrow. Speak to you then.